Namaste. This is a talk on the foundations of health for Sri Aurobindo Medical Association. There are three basic foundations, or four if we want to put it like that. One is the physical vital apparatus, which is the Aadhar, the base for all we do in this world. Second is psychological, and the third is spiritual. These are the three foundations for any action upon this world. Spiritual is the beginning, and spiritual is also the final emergence. In between, we have the body and the life force as well as the mind. So, these are the foundations which we have to work upon. The purpose of this foundation is not just to secure absence of disease, but to have a body which is not only healthy, but it can support the play of higher and higher energies, so that it can allow us to progress, it allows us to become instruments and channels of a greater and greater work. So first we must be very clear why we want to have this foundation. It's not just so that we look good, we remain healthy, we avoid the medicines, but also because the body is an instrument. Sarira madhyam khalu dharma sadhanam. It should be an instrument for the fulfillment of dharma. And this dharma also includes the right kind of joy, as Ayurveda puts it. So how do we secure a firm foundation? As far as the body is concerned, there are two things. One is heredity, over which we don't have much control, though it is true that a very strong pressure of mental will can possibly alter heredity. But that is a different subject altogether. And on the other hand, body works marvelously with habit. And these habits are best formed during childhood and nowadays also during adolescence. Fundamental things about the body are, number one, regularity and discipline. One of the best trainings for that is work. This is one thing which today somehow the online work, the work from home culture, it's not very healthy, because it is work is not just about output, that you have a task, you have completed the task and you get money paid for it. I'm not talking of online classes, etc. That's a different thing, because you have a format, you have a time, etc. But work which is purely online and based on input output, it's not very conducive to forming a good habit, regularity, punctuality, and discipline, which come very naturally through work. So, to form a habit, and each one should form their own habit. It's not that there is a standard format for everybody, but a habit in which there is enough scope for flexibility, but not a flexibility at whims and fancies, but a flexibility which is allowed in case situations are of a different kind. For example, I have this habit of having my lunch at 11:45. It can be plus minus 15 minutes, this way, that way. But when I am traveling, I cannot afford to have my lunch at 11:45. I may be giving a talk. So that time I should be flexible enough that even if it is 1:30, 2 o'clock, I should be able to handle that part very clearly without becoming agitated, without getting the nerves getting excited. So there should be routine. Along with routine, there should be a certain degree of flexibility. Otherwise, when the routine is too rigid, that also creates a difficulty. So, about regularity and punctuality and a disciplining of the body through habits, there should be a time for everything, because nature works with rhythms. And if we learn to respect the rhythms, introduce our own rhythms for the body, then it works excellently. So, we can fix a time when we wake up, we can fix a time when we sleep. The ideal hours, of course, we all know, may not be always feasible, but to wake up with sunrise, not sleep with sunset, but sleep when it's nature. In nature, the energies work like that. So, during sunrise, there is a kind of automatic surge of waking up hormones and energies in the system. It's well documented. So around 4:35, but 4:35 in today's times is difficult because sleeping hours have become late. So let's say around 5:36, we just advance by another 1 hour, that's an excellent time to wake up, because by then the hormonal system is, the wake up hormones are active. And similarly, when we see that late, towards later part of the night, that's 10:30 to 11, that's a very good time to slip into sleep, because automatically the sleep hormones are active. As I said, well, there are each individual considerations, but by and large, it's always good to sleep before midnight. It's a very good habit to form. So, this about the sleep. And in sleep, there is not only about the number of hours, but the quality of sleep. So, it's never a good idea to switch on the TV, to go on to WhatsApp, to listen to some kind of usual conversation going on, animated discussions, or even between people to have an animated discussion and then go to sleep. It's much better to have a kind of basic quietude, so that we slip into sleep very gently, nicely, beautifully. And each one has his own way. My own favorite way is, imagine that you are sleeping in the mother's lap. Some people like to put a little music, maybe a cup of warm milk with honey. All these are very simple, well known methods to induce natural sleep. Music itself is a very good way of sleeping. Some people, of course, use talks to sleep, and it's okay if that be helpful. That's one of the ways. So, this about sleep. The other thing about body is about food. So, nowadays, a lot of things are going on about food. Take milk, don't take milk, do this, don't do this. So much so that the mind at the end of the day is completely confused what to do and what not to do. And this confusion is never a good thing. Confusion at any level is not good. So sometimes it's good to use very simple, practical, common sense. So if we look at the human body, it's true that human body is made largely for vegetarian food. But at the same time, if you look at the length of the intestine, if you look at the teeth, it's largely meant for vegetarian food. And if you take a high fiber vegetarian food, most of the things are taken care of. At the same time, here also, we should not make such a rigid dogmatic rule that the mind begins to create havoc just because we made a rigid rule. And there should be nothing which should be imposed for everyone. So supposing somebody eats meat, at least don't make it a habit of eating meat unless you are living in a country where you have grown up in this way. So it's very important that there are places where we have grown up from childhood in a certain way. For instance, if we go to Europe, taking a little bit of wine is a way of life. But if we do it in India, because we have this tendency for oriental flush, we are likely to get drunk much more easily. So we have to take into consideration many factors and not just one. At the same time, as I said, human body is meant largely for vegetarian food. About milk, so much controversy has been created. But if we look at the human history of evolution, at least in India, for sure, we have grown up on mother's milk and cow's milk since God knows ages. So, to believe that this is suddenly going to do a big harm because there are some studies done here and there, we should be very careful, because we make a fetish of things, end up with popping up pills which are, have all kinds of ingredients. Say when we take a vitamin B12 pill, we are not only taking vitamin B12. We must know we have a coat, we have ingredients, we have the surface chemicals. So all these things are packaged. So simple way is to take a little bit of milk. And for us, particularly in the dining room, milk has been sanctioned by the mother. So I don't see any reason to enter into this kind of a mental debate and controversy. But again, those who want to, they can. And there are individual allergies, without a doubt about it. And if it doesn't suit someone, it's a different thing. But by and large, vegetarian diet with a cup of milk takes care of most of the ingredients. And the third thing about food is, if food is sattvic in nature, which means fruits, which means not a deep refrigerated food, food which is largely fresh. These were things which we missed today, because there were no fridges. Food was prepared in the right amount, and it was prepared fresh. Many of these things we have lost. So in any case, don't refrigerate it for a long time. So all food which is refrigerated for a long time tends to develop tamasic quality. So basically, sattvic quality food is a very good food, and this food should be preferably prepared with a nice feeling. So in India, at least, we had this system of not only mothers preparing food, but a kind of prayer before eating, while cooking. So all this is a total package. Food is not just about the ingredients, it's not just about calories and nutrients. It's also about the state of consciousness in which it is prepared, about how we are taking it, in what state of consciousness, not through animated discussions going on a table or the television being on. So these are some fundamental things about food. The third thing is, well, how many times a day? Well, we know that the famous dictum is eat well, your breakfast, lunch reasonably well, dinner should be light. This is the standard dictum, but each one follows their own way. 3 to 4 meals, smaller meals, is better than, say, big meals, or 3 or 4 meals works well with enough amount of fibers. Then comes the third thing about the physical body, apart from sleep and food, is exercise. So here again, the standard format is do the exercises which comes to you most readily, but the simplest exercise, the best exercise which is inbuilt in our system is walking. So walking 40 to 45 minutes a day at a moderate pace of about 4 kilometers, 3 to 4 kilometers in an hour, 40 to 45 minutes a day is known to be the best exercise that one can do on a regular basis. And one need not necessarily go to the park always, it may not be available. It is something missing, this park culture, there should be many more parks when a city is being planned, but anyways. So, but it can be done in many places. I mean, Sri Aurobindo used to do it in the room. And all that we need to do is the will, the consciousness that goes into it, walking up and down the stairs, picking up things by yourself, putting the dish, cleaning the dish, all this forms a total package. But yes, 40 minutes take out for walking, which is a good exercise. So along with that, there is one exercise which is very important, exercise of the facial muscles through smile. So do smile often, and as often as you can, but don't smile too much lest people think that you need to see a doctor. So keep a balance. So balance is another very important watchword. Balance and moderation, the golden mean from Aristotle to Buddha. So keep a balance doesn't mean that we fight in balance. We get angry in balance. All that it means is that there should be a certain balance and moderation. Don't eat too much, don't eat too less. Fasting is not a healthy thing, regardless of the ketone diet and all that. And I have the Gita to support this claim, and the Buddha. So eat in moderation. As the mother says, it's much more difficult to eat in moderation all the meals, take as much as you want to eat and eat as much as you can digest, then to go fasting for a day or 2 days. That's, in fact, these extremes are never good for the body, because when you eat regularly in moderation, it allows the body hormones are all tuned. So fasting may be good for like a dieting process, and sometimes it may have some benefits, but overall moderation is the best thing. So eat in moderation, sleep in moderation, neither too much nor too less. The bed also, as the Gita describes, not too soft, not too hard. So basically lead a life of moderation, yuktahar viharasya, not that I will just shut myself in a room, and nor somebody who is all the time busy having, going all over with friends and spending a lot of time in meaningless activities. So this is about the physical foundation. Another very important thing interconnected with the body is the breath and the life energy. So this is an area which is completely ignored. We take breathing for granted, but we don't know how to breathe. I mean, we have to just observe our breathing and see how it affects our system and how our inner states affect our breath. Sometimes it's very simple and easy to regulate our inner state simply by taking deep conscious breaths. So, of course, I'm not entering into pranayam and nadi shuddhi, that's a specialized subject. But I do believe something which I have practiced, that time to time taking deep conscious breaths is helpful. So it can be any time when, especially when you're feeling little lethargic, take a few deep breaths, conscious breaths, it helps. So taking a few deep and conscious breaths, it's like the mind turns to the breath and tells a message to the breath that look, be in ordered rhythm. So what it means is simply that we are using the mind by becoming conscious of the breath, taking deep regular breaths. We are simply asking the breath to be regular and in rhythm. time to time. Then it gets inbuilt into the system. And this breath has an effect on the prana, life energy. Shubindu says that. There is an interconnectedness. Of course, if we go into the detailed inner workings of prana, we know that there are panch pranas, the fivefold life breath, and that's a different subject. But on a very simple day to day basis, just as we keep an account of expenditure and income with regard to money, I hope people keep an account. It's a very good practice to not only to save money but to bring money. As an aside, whatever be your pay, I mean, something which I have seen works very well. Make a few envelopes. This envelope for this envelope for this. Put your money. It's a very good disciplining. Now it's very difficult because everything is digital currency. But keep an account, as simple as that. So there is similarly the balance of pranic energy. When we exhaust ourselves doing too much work, here also, too much work is never a very advisable thing. So in the ashram we see the mother would normally 6 to 8 hours. Why? Because that's good. It's good and makes us healthy. But if we try to do too much works, the nerves may not be able to take that load. They get fatigued. And when the nerves are fatigued, the nerves are the interface between the human body and the forces that are all around. So they become irritable, they become excitable, and depression, adverse forces, all of them can enter. So it's important to keep the nerves healthy and not to demand from the body a lot more than what it can really give. Because it will give, under the pressure of the vital, it will give, but it won't be very healthy for it. So it's important to keep that balance also. And another thing with regard to energy transaction is to know where we are drawing energy from and where we are releasing it. So here it's important to understand the value of company and the friends we keep. Because there are people in whose company we can lose a lot of energy and gain also a lot of energy, sometimes unfortunately of a very dark kind. Because we go by external appearances, but there may be things there are things in human nature, the kind of energy that they embody or carry, which may not be very healthy. So it's important to be careful about the company we keep. And especially things like partying and that kind of drugs, smoking, of course alcohol. We know that these are never something which are good for the nerves. They are very harmful because they irritate the nerves. They stun the nerves. And nervous system is the interface between the gross physical and the subtle world. So we should be careful about the company we keep, the places we go, malls, markets. It's okay, we have to go for attending to whatever we have to buy. Though nowadays there is Amazon, which I don't know whether it is good or bad. I'm not much in favor of internet shopping, because internet has its own disadvantages. Very subtly many messages come, and sometimes, especially youngsters, they may go to sites unwittingly which are not very healthy, and they think it's just a site, but they don't realize that this is really a net which takes the mind captive in itself. And that's how it sucks the energy, draws us into all kinds of habits. So there should be a discipline even about the WhatsApp and the internet usage. So it's best to fix a time when one will check that. Of course, as a doctor, I can take certain concessions because can't help it. Messages may come which may be important. Even messages are in interchange. So interchange is not just verbal things and message. This does not mean that we don't message. We message. But we should be careful and conscious. Sometimes we see that when we message, we go overboard. I mean, not we, but there are particularly people who go overboard. Sometimes through message, they receive a lot of emotional and other things, impact vital energies. So basically, it's all about leading a life which is conscious. So energy transactions are important. And it's also important to replenish energy every day from the high spiritual source. So it's good to keep a certain company, but the best company, as the mother says, isn't the divine the best friend? So while it's okay, we have friends with whom we share, but personally I feel all one's deepest personal, emotional pain, the best person to share is not a psychiatrist. It is the divine. Without a doubt the divine, and I am not saying this to lighten my work, but being a psychiatrist I can say that Well, a true psychiatrist should be able to actually bring that aspect. That I often advise people: write letters to the mother, keep a diary in which you can write your things, your problems. See how they are washed out. This keeping things inside and bottling up or sharing with a friend who may or may not understand. Many friends will give all kinds of advices, and if you take those advices seriously, your life may crash land. I have seen people give all kinds of advices. There is a little fight, and they start saying, "Yes, leave this, leave that." They don't realize that much of this is temporary. I always believe bitterness and anger are very temporary. Love is that which endures. But a whole generation does not understand it, because they are very impatient about quick results. And there are people who will always say, do this, do that. So it's and if you flow with that, later on you have to bear the consequences. Much better to just be steady. Life force should be steady. If it's unsteadied, it leads to a lot of imbalances. Learn to steady. It's okay. Things are coming as a wave. One of the simple thing mother says is step back. Stand back. Wait for the wave to pass. It's okay. If we learn this practice rather than just rushing into impulse, even if you have rushed into impulse, step back. Today only somebody was asking about depression. I was saying depression is a idle man's sport and a very dangerous one. Because if you are busy with work, where is the time to be depressed? And indulging in thoughts of depression, that nobody loves me. Depression is a very selfish act where you are only thinking about yourself. You are not thinking about, another person, the world. So these are things which, lot of things go away if you make a very healthy routine and stick to that. If I have to read, I have to read. That's okay. That I may be having a wave of depression, just ignore it and you'll see after some time it passes away. But if you sit and indulge, then you had it. So these are some simple grandmother's ways, time tested, and of course each of us, I'm sure, have practiced these things. So the other aspect is, as I said, apart from the life force, is the psychological foundation. So we all talk about positive thoughts and keep away negative thoughts. What is the simplest way to cultivate positive thoughts in the mind? To me, the best way is to be in the company of books which are positive and uplifting. That's for short method. So therefore, Patanjali in his Yoga Sutra says something very interesting. And he says that Swadhyaya. So apart from Yam Niyama, which is about disciplining your vital should be disciplined as well as refined. So some interest in music, some interest in art and culture, it refines the vital. At the same time, Swadhyaya. It is very interesting. He includes, and Swadhyaya is something which should be done regularly. And Swadhyaya means for us, of course, is Mother and Sri Aurobindo's books. Books of Swami Vivekananda, books of Sri Ramakrishna, books of those who have gone before us, realized. Now when we read those thoughts, it's not about a book. It's about these thoughts are entering into our head. After all, what am I going to give as an output of life? What has gone inside me? So as a child, if I keep hearing that, you are useless, then in my life I grow up with the idea that I am useless and I am going to bring this out to the world. But when we read someone like, Swami Vivekananda, arise, awake and stop not till the goal is reached. Or, Mother says at one point, I would like each one of us to be able to live with this utterance of a great sage. And thus he says, arise, O resplendent one. Just to read that. Who are we? We are not fallen beings. And we don't have to do some extraordinary things. We just have to lead a life which is full of gratitude, full of compassion, full of charity and kindness, full of understanding, benevolence. And where does all this come from? Through these books. So every day to cultivate the habit, maybe half an hour in the evening or sometime in the morning. And this used to be part of the Indian household. People don't know. You see, in India, people say that it's not very nice that in India psychiatrists are unwelcome. Well, they are unwelcome because we never needed them. So why we didn't read? I have grown up in the culture where every morning parents used to read Ramayana. So when they read Ramayana, they read the life of Rama, they read such high uplifting things, a way of life. Or they read the Gita. Whenever they had a problem, they understood it. They looked at it like that. They had a constant living psychiatrist or the supreme psychologist working with them. So if you want to avoid going to psychiatrist, and I would this also that psychiatrists should inculcate these things and send people to these rather than psychoanalytical psychotherapy, etc. Spiritual psychotherapy. Read books which contain these beautiful things. When we read the life of Rama, then we understand that we get so much bogged down by these small little miseries. Look at Ram, how he is suffering 14 years, and look at Sita. It's so inspiring when we read the Mahabharata, the life of the Pandavas. So basically, read books which are uplifting and sublime in nature. And then finally, we go to the spiritual foundation of health. That is the real foundation. If we have only cultivated physical, vital, and mental foundation, then we are on unstable grounds. The mind, vital, and the body are by their nature restless. But foundation cannot be on restless grounds. So there should be a strong, stable foundation, and that only spiritual consciousness can provide. Because that is the basis of everything else. And even if we are unable to go to the ultimate regions of consciousness or access that stable basis of which the Shruti has said as Brahman, at least we can have something like the Brahman which incarnates as a human representative. The Guru, the Master, the Avatar, and lean upon him. Very beautifully, Sri Aurobindo speaks of this in Savitri about in thy hard passage, O mortal, in thy hard passage through a suffering world, lean for thy soul's support on heaven's strength. Turn towards high truth, aspire to love and peace. And then he says, for through small, make of thy daily way a pilgrimage, for through small joys and griefs thou movest towards God. So if we remember these lines, they are like, to me they are like everyday elixir. I'll read them again and then close this. About the spiritual foundation. O mortal, make of thy daily way a pilgrimage. So basically he is asking us that make of our life a pilgrimage. Why he is saying pilgrimage? So that we remember the goal. This everyday joys and sorrows are one thing, but the great goal towards which we are going. And then he says, lean for thy soul's support on heaven's strength every day. Converse with God, sit in meditation, sit in quietude, in peace. Build the foundation of peace and equanimity, endurance. And all this can be done when we know that this is a step towards something great. And that great is the divine consummation. For through small joys and griefs, thou movest towards God. To remember that these are events that come and go, but the real journey is moving towards the divine, to make the divine as the aim, to make the divine as the strongest support and the friend who never fails us. So form a relationship with God and make the relationship not just of Guru and Sishya, because there is a distance, but the relation of a mother and child, of father and child, and above all the relation of a friend. Make the divine our friend. Thank you.